Well, it's official. My dad finally came back from getting the milk after 5 whole years. Of course, I'm talking about none other than Rick Grimes from The Walking Dead, and holy fuck, was his return depressing as shit. Major spoilers, by the way. I'm gonna be talking about The Ones Who Live, episode 1, what I think, what I predicted in my last Walking Dead video, and what I'm excited for the rest of the season. Man, I don't even know where to begin with this episode. The very first scene of the entire show is Rick contemplating suicide. I knew we were gonna see Rick at his lowest, but holy shit, dude, I was not ready for that. Like, me and my dad were just sitting there watching it together, and we're just like, wow. Like, the first thing that opens on when you're watching on AMC Plus, it's like trigger warning, suicidal thoughts and actions, and we're like, oh, lovely. And then it actually starts with that. We're like, oh wow, welcome back to The Walking Dead, suicide, yay. Then to make it worse, the next thing we see is kind of from the trailer where Rick is tied to a metal wire in the woods, and he's like running, and he pretends to like drop his axe, and then he fucking chops his hand off in order to escape. I knew he was gonna lose his hand, but I didn't know how it was gonna happen, and I was not disappointed. A lot of dumbass people on the internet were like, man, you should have just cut the wire. You don't think he's fucking tried that before? We're told kind of right off the bat in the episode that he's tried to escape 5 different times, so I think it's safe to assume he's tried to cut the wire and he realized he can't, and it had to be his hand. I know a lot of people were expecting him to get bit or some shit, but I really like that he did it on his own terms. Also, a lot of people genuinely thought his hand was chopped in this scene, but you can clearly still see his hand. His fingers are just kind of spread apart a little bit. The sad part about the whole thing is that even though he chopped his hand to escape, he still gets captured, and it's genuinely the saddest shit I've ever seen on fucking television. Me and my dad were like borderline in tears watching that scene. Yeah, and a lot of people were complaining that he chopped it for no reason, but that was the whole point, right? He's been held prisoner 5 years. He tried to escape every other way that's possible. He did what he thought was the only real option left. That's my take on it anyway. Moving on, we learned what a consignee is. It's a program that takes captured people by the military and slowly turns them into citizens of the CRM. I thought that was interesting and actually made sense. We meet Okafor, a CRM general who's a little dark and mysterious, but he takes pity on Rick and tries to help him. It's revealed that he's the one that actually convinced the CRM to keep Rick as a consignee after he tried to escape multiple times. I honestly thought Jadis was going to be in the first episode, but nope, she didn't even show up, which I was very surprised by. Speaking of Jadis, finally learned what a fucking A and B is. Okafor says that A is a leader and B is a follower, which I got totally wrong in my last video. I thought A was a test subject who was bitten, and B was a healthy non-test subject, which I got half correct because the test subject part is actually true. The bit and not bit part I got completely wrong. And now knowing what an A and B actually is, it makes everything Jadis says in the main show make way more sense. It's also confirmed Jadis said Rick is a B in order to save him from being tortured as a subject, which I also got right in my video. It's also confirmed that Okafor realized Rick was an A and convinced the CRM to keep him after Jadis brought him in. I kind of skipped over it, but earlier in the episode, Rick actually does use the military to gain the CRM's trust as a way to escape, which I also predicted in my last video. I'm kind of proud of myself for accidentally guessing a couple things correctly. Continuing on, Okafor tries to convince Rick that he's the only one that can change the CRM for the better, and Rick does not give a single shit. He then goes to a character named Esteban that we saw earlier in the episode and asks him to help Rick escape. And like the real fucking homie he is, he helps Rick out. Side note, dude, I will cry Esteban dies. I love him so much. He's such a good comedic relief for the show, especially with how serious it is. And like Esteban's like so wholesome. It's such a weird character to have in a show like The Walking Dead. It's just like this wholesome, funny guy. But anyways, Rick then tries to act on his escape plan using Esteban's help, but a stupid ass child that comes out of fucking nowhere gets in the way and ruins his entire plan. Why do kids suck so much in The Walking Dead? I swear, they ruin everything every time. Like, every child that has been in The Walking Dead has fucking ruined something at one point. Like, I swear. Anyways, moving on. One of the new characters, Thorn, saves Rick's ass once again by covering for him. I didn't think she was like a terrible character or anything, but I thought she was just kind of like she didn't really do much, but she seems somewhat important, and she's the one who keeps Rick in check several times throughout the episode, which I do really like. We found out Okafor is actually the one that found Rick's message in a bottle that we saw him throw in the finale of The Walking Dead, which was for Michonne, obviously. Okafor says he'll track down and kill Michonne and Judith if Rick tries to escape again. Obviously, Rick gets fucking pissed and beats the shit out of him. Okafor kind of manipulates Rick into saying he made his choice and he can't go back on it. I thought it was such a really interesting scene. Like, it was so well acted and beautifully made, and the dialogue in like throughout the whole show is like really interesting. Usually I get kind of like bored of just dialogue after dialogue, but it made it so interesting in the episode. Like, I genuinely want to know what the characters are saying, and not many shows are like that for me. Moving on, Rick writes his last letter to Michonne, and it's really heartfelt and sad. And in the letter, he basically says that he's giving up, trying to leave, and he's accepting his new life, which I thought was a really interesting choice, because when he finally gives up on looking for her, he ends up finding her. There's a little bit of a time lapse, so I'm guessing like a year or two has passed. They probably did that to match The Ones Who Live's timeline with like the main Walking Dead show's timeline, so it would like kind of add up if people are like trying to do the math on like how many years have passed and stuff like that. The show cuts to Rick flying a helicopter where he tells a story about his father purposely burning down his family's farm in order to get better crops the next year. Moral of the story was basically you have to be willing to sacrifice in order to achieve better things. I thought the scene was really interesting because we learned something new about Rick, and you know, we've been with this character for what, like 12 years, and after 12 years we're still learning. We're learning more things about the character's backstory, and we're seeing different sides of him that we've never seen before. So it's like, it's super interesting. And then out of fucktown nowhere, Okafor gets absolutely fucked by a missile and explodes. I knew that motherfucker was gonna die, but not in the first episode, and definitely not that fucking brutal. I mean, he was kind of a dick though, so I can't be too upset about his death. And plus, his death finally led up to Rick and Michonne reuniting. I was like genuinely flabbergasted that the episode ended on them seeing each other like that. Me and my dad were watching and we're like, no, you can't end it like that, please. What a way to end the episode. But yeah, my overall thoughts are that the episode was sad as shit, brutal as shit, and everything I could have wanted and more. And as this little last segment of my video, I'm gonna kind of cover everything I predicted wrong or right in my last Walking Dead video, as well as stuff that could still potentially happen. First theory in my last video was something I mentioned earlier with what I thought an A and B was. The second theory I had was that Rick was going to be forced to kill people to prove he's worthy of being in the CRM, which I kind of got wrong. Okafor kind of just took him in and helped him. He didn't really do much to prove himself. The CRM did seem to take notice of him and realize they could use him, which that part I kind of got right, I guess. In my video, I also say I think Rick will gain the trust of the CRM over the course of years, use that trust as a way to escape, which I actually got completely right. Next thing I say in the video is that I think Rick will try to leave breadcrumbs for Michonne, which he did, but eventually gave up at the end of the first episode. One of my theories was also that the boat from the finale might be important and used as an escape method by Rick, but I don't think that's gonna happen. I'm guessing the boat was just there that one time. I also say maybe the Commonwealth train will be used in some way in The Ones Who Live, but I doubt it. It could still happen in a future episode, but from everything we know so far, no one actually knows where the serum is besides the people that live there. So a train going straight to the serum would not make sense. A couple characters mentioned that the serum allies itself with big cities and not small communities like the Commonwealth and Alexandria and all that. My last theory is a little bit how Michonne might track down Rick, so I'm gonna save that for my video on episode 2. I think that covers just about everything I've been wanting to talk about. Let me know what you guys think in the comments about this video and the first episode as a whole, and thanks for watching.